And welcome all of you to this open webinar of the Trust Stroke Project. This is a series of webinars in which we invite all our partners to share the knowledge and their expertise in the project. So this is a European funded project that I will summarize briefly later on. So for now, we have here the VHIR team composed by Ana Sanchez, Sara Zullino, and Tim Moser, that will share their experience and expertise on IP strategies for AI-driven healthcare solution. Next slide, please. So this is today's agenda. So there are two main topics that we are going to take over today. The first one is empower digitalization and AI in healthcare through multidisciplinary collaboration. So Sara Zullino and Ana Sanchez will take care of this part. And the second part will be Tim Moser talking about intellectual property, AI, and use cases in healthcare applications. And then there will be a Q&A session. So I encourage all the participants to address all the questions through the chat, and we'll take all the questions at the end of the webinar. Next slide, please. So for those who are not familiar with this project, Trust Stroke is a European funded project. It's a project of integration of data into the system, including for the stroke care pathway, not only in the hospital part, but also in the pre-hospital part. All these informations in the retrospective, prospective, and proof of concept model serve to feed and train algorithms that are trained locally in a federated learning infrastructures. It means the algorithms are traveling across 3 different European stroke centers to improve the prediction of the response to treatment and the prediction of readmission, outcome, and so on and so forth. So we have specific questions to solve in this project. It's a consortium of 13 partners with a 5 years duration. Next slide, please. So briefly, you can see the main objectives of Trust project. So in this project, the CERN is in charge of developing a federated learning infrastructure. This network is a digital network that is served to train algorithms in a decentralized way. So the data stays in the hospital, initial algorithms are trained locally, and then all the learners are going to a second server and travel to the next hospital for further training. So the data stays in the hospital, are the algorithms, the ones that travels from one hospital to the other. This is the federated learning infrastructure. So we will create algorithms. These algorithms are assets, are treated as devices. So we need to protect the intellectual property of this algorithms that are the main product of this Trust Stroke project. Also, we have a digital application, digital platform called Nora to collect systematically outcome data on follow-up and to be integrated together with the electronic medical records in the local center. And then once we perform a retrospective study, prospective study, this algorithm are going to be trained a proof of concept study of this Trust Stroke platform in relevant application environment. Next slide, please. So that's why it's so important to know more about intellectual property and all these digital assets, not only in this project, but in other projects, in other different use cases in healthcare that produce, and we need to identify what are the real product, devices, protocols that we need to protect properly. And that's why we invite our partner, VHIR, to take care of this webinar today. And I'm going to hand over now to Ana Zullino and Sara Zullino and Ana Sanchez to talk about empowering digitalization and AI in healthcare through multidisciplinary collaboration. Sara, Ana.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for the nice introduction, and welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to guide you into the world of translational medicine first, just to let you to set the scene and let you understand what is translational medicine and why it is important, And then our colleague team will be featuring insights on IP, intellectual properties, management strategies. So first of all, who are we? So VHIR is the European Research Infrastructure for Translational Medicine, and we basically bring together resources, expertise, capabilities for research communities in order to facilitate the translation of the latest scientific discoveries into benefits for patients. VHIR is a membership organization. Our shareholders are the member countries. We have thus far in our network 14 member countries, for a total number of more than 150 research institutes, hospitals, and laboratories across Europe. We specialized into five main scientific areas: ATMPs, biomarkers, imaging and tracing, small molecule, vaccine, inflammation, and immunomonitoring. Our legal status is generic. We are a not-for-profit, and we are basically an organization with European interest. So what our focus is translational medicine. So really how to bridge the gap between the knowledge that you researchers generate into the lab. So we specialize in supporting you, bringing this knowledge to the patient faster and of course more safely. And translational research is by design multidisciplinary, multisectoral, but more importantly, patient-centered. So that's why being also in our status of a non-profit allow us to sit together with different stakeholders from industry, academia, patients, clinicians, and regulators to work together to find a common solution for an improved patient outcome. So translational research is really a paradigm that you have to adopt in your research study. And basically, it's a multidisciplinary because through technology platform, you have to discover biological insights, also blend them with clinical observation, and then you will find, let's say, the answer to your clinical question, and you will create your tool or your molecule for an improved patient outcome. VHIR is focused on different, let's say, activities. We offer access to our network of experts, clinicians, technology platform. We develop novel research tools. We provide education and training activities, and we develop better cross-sectoral collaboration and public-private partnership. Now I will give the floor to my colleague Anna, who will explain us a little bit more how it is important translational research.
Thank you, Sara. So to understand better what we do in VHIR, and especially from the innovation unit, we will look into the translational research challenges. These translational research challenges, we referred these challenges during the implementation of the translation of a scientific discovery into a clinical application. So most of the basic scientific discoveries, they fail to get into later stages of development, as most of you know. And some of these is because of an unclear value proposition, a suboptimal clinical trial designed to validate the solution, poor regulatory planning, or lack of iterative development, for example, and also, of course, limited funding. This is what we know as a translational gap or valley of death. So from our innovation unit in VHIR, next slide, please. We try to improve the chances of translation. So what we do is when our collaborators, they reach to us, we perform a translational feasibility assessment. What we look into this translational feasibility assessment is the elements that we need to be defined before the project execution, and this is very important. So in this, we will look into the clear end product definition, the feasibility of the approach, the medical need, and of course, the patient's involvement, the intellectual property and freedom to operate, as we will see today, early health technology assessments for potential payer reimbursement and cost-benefit analysis, and the regulatory roadmap. All of these, we do it inside the VHIR and also with the help of our expert centers. Next slide, please. So the expert centers is a network of 7 centers that we have in VHIR. They are across our member states, and they specialize in some of these expertise that we mentioned before. It's early HTA or regulatory expertise or certain innovation. So today we will see how intellectual property accelerate translation. And some of the messages that we will see is like how to protect innovations. We will secure exclusivity and attract investment, how this can facilitate collaborations, how intellectual property will encourage commercialization and the market entry and the revenue generation. And to take away, I would say that IP is a valuable tool for accelerating translational research. And it plays a crucial role, bringing this gap between the basic scientific discovery and the practical applications. So I leave the floor to Sara, that she will introduce a use case of AI-enabled tools.
Thank you very much, Anna. So basically, I think now it's really important to provide you with an example of what are the challenges involved in translational medicine. So let's think that you have to, we would like to bring to the market, to the patient, an AI-enabled tool for clinical decision-making to support clinicians in clinical decision-making processes for an improved patient outcome. And for instance, you are developed an AI-based algorithm to predict the risk of a second stroke using a combination of laboratory data, patient-reported outcomes, and imaging data. And this AI tool aims to identify patients at high risk of experiencing a second stroke and to guide also personalized preventive measures. So this is basically one of the main outcomes of stroke. So to use AI in the clinic, you must answer actually many difficult questions along the way. First of all, regarding your algorithm, is your algorithm robust enough, powerful enough to analyze very complex data sets? And how is your data? Can you access a lot of data to allow your algorithm to train and fit better the results? Are you really covering an unmet medical need? So someone is going to use your solution at the end. So you are really addressing a target population. And also the importance of bringing into your research aspects like intellectual property and regulatory consideration when you are developing your product. And this is also the main, let's say, thing of translational medicine, doing the right things and doing them at the right moment. And then the implementation. So how can you actually bring your tool to the patient? You need to partner with the right party in order to implement your solution into clinical settings. And also at the end, how you will ensure that you are producing value for society. And what is actually the fair value? How much your discovery, how much your tool will cost to the patient ultimately. So all these questions are very important to take into consideration when you are developing, in this case, an AI tool. And as I said, this is actually what we are doing together with Carlos and other project partners in TrustStroke. And here I would like also to emphasize the importance of multidisciplinary collaboration. So I don't want to repeat myself because already Carlos explained about the main aim of TrustStroke, but I really want to emphasize here also the role of VHIR, which is with package 7, so creating a regulatory roadmap, exploitation and sustainability strategies for the project. But also it is important to, again, stress that translational medicine is possible only if there are multiple expertise and capabilities coming together. And let's say the consortium that we have in TrustStroke really capture this aspect. So we have a leading stroke center in Europe. We have a federated data network developed by CERN. We have expertise specialized in AI. We have patient organization. We have also institutions expert in data fairness and trustworthiness. And we have also capabilities in US experience. So this is the perfect recipe for a successful project. So with that, I would like to conclude and just a few take-home messages. So multidisciplinary collaboration is really key in order to drive AI into clinical settings. Successful projects should prioritize user needs, so not just technology. So you really have to answer a clinical question and solve an unmet medical need. Your research should be patient-centered, again, to answer a patient need, and also bringing together different expertise can improve the chances to bring your innovation into real-world healthcare solution. And that is my last slide. So now with that, I would like to thank you very much, and I will give the floor to Tim. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Sara. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
And see the slides? Okay, perfect. So this is me. I'm joining Sara and Anna today. I'm collaborating with the actress. My day job is working in the office that does commercialization for the Netherlands Cancer Institute. And we're commonly dealing with questions of what's able to be protected and what's the best route to protect things in order to further develop and commercialize it. So this is interesting topic. I think today's presentation is going to be very at a very high level. Try to keep it kind of as simple as possible. So a couple things. What's the point? If you look in the right banner, this is the Trust Stroke project, which you can see the statistics for the very serious statistics for strokes, 1.5 million strokes by 2025, the number of deaths per year, et cetera. So obviously it's a big societal challenge and a big challenge in the healthcare industry. And like any other EU projects, Trust Stroke generates IP, all kinds of IP. So know-how and expertise, data, especially in Trust Stroke software code, the information, like the federated learning model and the way that the information is stored and accessed and used in the project is potentially a form of IP. And finally, I guess the question people often have is, are these things patentable if you have a machine learning algorithm or AI technology? So we'll go into that a bit. The objective today is basically just to get an overview, a very brief overview, because it's obviously a deep subject and we only have a handful of minutes, of IP in the AI field, also in stroke detection specifically, and then basically to point out a few specific examples about how this is being used in some similar products. Okay, so this diagram finds its way into all kinds of publications. Probably people have seen this before. These are different forms of AI that get used in various different technologies. What I would like to point out is that a couple of the most frequently occurring perhaps in the healthcare field, which is machine learning. So that's basically a way to analyze data in a non-human fashion, so that it actually can derive more inferences from it than a human would be able to in short order. And vision, which actually is also image processing, so very commonly used. Very commonly used in the fields of radiology, as we'll describe later. For patentability purposes, this gets a little bit into kind of an abstraction, but in terms of patent law, AI is considered mathematics and software, which is itself executed on a computer. So from a patenting perspective, it is not directly patentable. However, there's kind of a loophole around this, or a solution, which is basically to find an application where it solves a specific problem that can relate to the intended application and to internal technical details. So I'll go through a couple of patent applications later, but basically, if it solves a problem that's a known problem and it can be established that it solves that problem, then it can be potentially patentable. So if we go back to this, we also want to point out that basically a patent is one form of protecting this IP, but there are other forms of protection. So for example, if this is a piece of software code, this is protected by, sorry about that. I keep flipping this side. It's protected automatically by the writing of the software code. Furthermore, if a group keeps the data secret, the method's proprietary, it can be protected as a trade secret. So that's something where if you don't publish the exact method, you don't file a patent, you can actually keep it secret. And so that is another form of protection. Sometimes that's also used in these cases. I want to point out, as you probably expect, the number of AI patent applications is growing sharply. So these are US, this is according to the US Patent and Trademark Office. These are, each line is 10,000. So these are different categories, the same different categories that we're seeing in the diagram before. So tens of thousands of patents are being filed, and especially in the vision application of vision or image processing or in machine learning. So this is obviously a field that's seeing explosive growth from a patent perspective. This is a diagram from a very useful article showing basically there's been a strong uptake of what's called AI and machine learning enabled medical devices since the mid 1990s. And especially in the past 10 or so years, with the increase really being in primarily the radiology and a couple of other fields, but neurology is in there as well for things like, I would assume, stroke detection, amongst other things, if those are approved products, but certainly radiology with image processing, trying to augment the role of a radiologist is becoming a dominant part of the field. So if we get into the actual, go from a high level to basically go to the details of a patent application. So this is just the way that you would see a US, actually this is a world patent application, a PCT filing. So the cover page of this, and if you look at the details, this is sort of an abstract for what this patent contains. So if you read the text down here, it's basically non-invasive angiography scans for automatic stroke triage and assessment. So this is a kind of overlay of how the data is used, segmentation, and then development of this methodology for automatic stroke detection, and sort of diagrammatic explanation of how the model works. So this is a kind of a typical way that you would have the data collated, and then the guts of the patent application is in the claims, which I'll go into in one patent in the coming slides. This is another company that works in the stroke detection field, so maybe known to some of the participants of Trust Stroke, Viz.ai, which is a San Francisco-based company. And I don't know if you can read this, but I'll read it for you. Abstract says a system for computer-aided triage, which is triage of can be some medical conditions, but amongst them is stroke. And if we actually look at the details of how the data is used, you have really this diagrammatic explanation of the system, which doesn't necessarily explain how the problem is being solved, but the problem is actually a little bit elaborated here. A standard radiology workflow, so images uploaded to radiologist queue, etc. So this is really making the case for how the system uses data in order to solve the problem. And again, it has to be adequately explained that it solves a problem. Otherwise, there may be difficulty advancing to a patent. And in this case, this is a patent that is not pending, but it's granted. So this is actually a patent that's already been issued. So they must have made the case that this will be useful enough that it solves the problem, and it's novel and it's inventive from their perspective, which are also important things in the patentability determination. This is another company which is in the stroke detection field called Brainomics. This is stroke detection that's been employed in the UK and in some aspects has been adopted by the NHS I think on an experimental basis, I don't think it's fully validated or registered yet, but it's being investigated. So this is a European patent issued or filed for by Brainomics. And if we dig into this a little bit, we have this kind of similar diagram where it's basically taking use of data and providing a processing understanding of how it's processed. And in this case, it really goes in. The claims are very directly stated in the first claim. So an assessment of the severity and location of ischemic stroke in a patient from a tomographic scan that provides three-dimensional data about a patient's brain. So really, this is making use of, obviously, of imaging data, correlating it with clinical data, and trying to basically provide a better diagnostic or prognostic indicator of this. So this is just to give you a sense for a couple of patents that have show what's been done in the field. There's another company, just to show you that this is not a one-way street. This is a company called VHIR, which is, I think, also based in the US. And they have quite a lot of granted patents involving AI. And their use cases really claims to be this patient engagement AI for clinical trials. So they have, of course, a smartphone empowered app, and according to their marketing language, it's the world's first patient engagement AI comprehensive platform, extends the reach of the care team, etc. So really, they're selling this service to pharmaceutical companies, etc., and clinical trials. If we actually look at one of their patents, just to see kind of what they're doing and try to understand this, this is, well, it's basically, not only is it instead of collecting data from a clinical perspective, it's actually collecting smartphone data representing micro expressions within 250 milliseconds. Oops, sorry. 250 milliseconds of presentation of the image. So basically, it's capturing expression data from individual users. So this is not just a one-way flow of the imaging data goes into the processing and is captured. It's actually capturing engagement on the patient or user side. So that this shows that this is really, kind of a circle being completed from the perspective of the technology. It's not just in the healthcare system, it's actually an interaction with the individual devices. So I think that's also expresses some of the power, but maybe also points out that privacy concerns are well-founded, because a lot of this information needs to be very carefully thought through how it's used. So that was kind of a flash of some aspects of patenting this, but I think we can draw some conclusions from this. The following is AI is patentable, and we see lots of patents being filed. Increasingly, these patents are in machine learning and image processing. Thousands each year are filed to solve various problems. AI can also be protected via software code and trade secrets. So we don't know so much about this, if it's a trade secret or if it's held within source code, but let's presume that that's also a way of protecting it. The AI patents are not only just talking about the processing, but also how information is set up in the architecture, how that impacts the clinical workflow, vice versa, how the clinical data goes into that architecture. And then finally, this aspect of being a two-way street. So patient engagement is also being covered in some of these patent applications and in some of the marketed products. There's a landscape document that TrustStroke will deliver in month 24 in April 2025. So this will go deeply into the IP of some companies that are working in the stroke detection and diagnostic fields. And I think, like Sara really pointed out, I'd like to reiterate that this IP is just a fraction of this product as you see it. It's a kind of way to protect it, but the commercialization of healthcare AI has a lot to do with other things that happen along the way. So there's, of course, importance in the regulatory pathway. And the use case is essential. So patients have to be able to use it and understand it. Clinicians have to find value in it, and other users have to be similarly supported by it. Of course, all these things have to demonstrate clinical utility. And then finally, there has to be a cost benefit. So the reimbursement or the economic basis for the product has to be supported by how much value it provides. And with that, I would like to hand the floor back to Carlos and oh, sorry, we need to kill that.
Yeah,
But
thank you
yes,
very much.
thank you. Yes.
Thank you, team, Anna and Sara. Really, really nice presentation of all of you. Is there any question in the chat? So please, if you have any question, use the chat to test occasion. We'll take the questions. In the meantime, I have some questions for you first, team. Really nice the use cases you showed are really clear examples of all the AIs products and assets that we have in the market and the pathways of protection. My question is how to select the optimal pathway. For instance, if I have an algorithm like in TrustFlow, we develop algorithm in pre-hospital. This is for trade secret, is patentable. What is the best option according to the asset? For software, I think is more trade secret. But for an algorithm, it could be a patent, like in this AI example that you showed, VHIR. This is patentable. How do you select early on in the process? What is the best pathway for that?
I think it's difficult to answer that question, and of course it depends on what is the use case and how the product will be commercialized. But I think there's a real, I would say, a dilemma or a controversy in the field about how protectable even a patent on a AI algorithm is, because these patents, even if they're granted, they're only as good as the ability to protect others from infringing. So if it's difficult to find that others are infringing, or it's difficult to enforce like financial damages that they've infringed, then it becomes, the value of a patent is brought into question. Of course, it's a very reassuring process when you write a patent application, because you sit down with a patent attorney, and you've done this before, but if you basically, you write the idea down and you file it in a way that's very satisfying, but actually the sheer fact of the number of these patents being filed means it's really uncertain at this point what will be the protectability of them in the future, if that makes sense. I mean, it's still, I guess the jury is still out. If that.
Yeah, it's a complex process, especially
in
this environment nowadays than the medical community in healthcare.
Yeah.
Also the regulator, they ask for explainability. So
exactly.
From this black box.
Indeed.
That you have protected in a way, nobody knows what is behind the algorithm, but
indeed
it needs to be explainable, giving some hints to competitors in the market. The reality is that. So how we can manage this situation with explainability, that we are the regulatory authorities, also the community, the medical community, they need more explainability about what is the rationale behind the algorithm.
So indeed that's the case, and your regulatory dossier also becomes part of your IP in that sense. Probably it's even potentially more valuable than filing a patent, because everything you've done to get to the stage to develop technical validation and clinical validation, and to have a QA system that says, everything you're testing for and all the way that you treat data is the same and consistent and verifiable, that's itself IP. So, whether or not that turns out to be more valuable than a patent is difficult to say, but certainly it becomes part of a regulated product. So I think that was also the last point is everything, it's all part of it's all done in parallel, so to speak, but it's also complex because if you change one input, you change you change the output.
You need to protect first and then explain.
Yeah.
And so on, like the VCM and this pattern.
Yeah.
Form. I already asked you this question before in other meetings, but I need you to share your thoughts about that. So this is complex when we develop an algorithm and when we put the label of this is a device. For now, for me, it's a device. We can use this to test the prediction of, for instance, the response to endovascular treatment. For instance, we developed an algorithm to predict the response to endovascular treatment. And what is the minimal level of accuracy of the algorithm that is acceptable for labeling, for patenting? And further developments will be upgrading and not a new product. For instance, I have an algorithm for the prediction of recanalization that is 60% accurate. And then we fit this algorithm with different databases, other databases, improving the predictive capabilities to 80%. Is a new product or is an upgrading of the former product?
It might depend on whether the data set that it was trained on is exactly the same. Off the top of my head, I would argue that would be a new product. If it's trained on the exact same data set, it has a better accuracy. So I think that would be a substantial change, but there probably is some definition. I'm not aware of it though. I think that's really probably a regulatory question.
Yeah, but are the regulators?
Yeah.
We will decide with a substantial, not substantial change in the initial product to be
Yeah.
considered a different one, not just an upgrade.
Yeah.
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 There is no more questions in the chat.
No,
I have
there.
a question to Sara.
Okay, good. Because I had a question for Tim.
Yeah.
You show very nicely this pathway of starting with the algorithm, then the data, then the unmet need. Sometimes it's the other way around, right? So we start with the unmet need, and then we have the databases. We need to harmonize, standardize our databases, and then dig into this data and create the algorithm that are going to be for the testing. It's not that way when we have a product already, and you need to. It's not that we need to look for different use cases, different than the one that was initially, the algorithm was initially created to fit the algorithm in this new use cases, and not the other way around, like to create an algorithm from the scratch.
No, indeed, you are actually right. So I wanted to basically reverse the order of the product development pipeline that I showed. So first, you are right, should be the patient at the center and unmet medical need. And actually, first should be the clinician like you, for instance, Carlos, because you know what are the challenges in your field, and you know what is needed there in order to improve stroke patient outcome. And then you look at the data that you have available, and what kind of, let's say, the variety of data that you have. In this case, you can have imaging data or labs data, molecular genetics data, and then you have to develop the right software to target these issues. So actually, you are right, and this is a nice opportunity to refine that slide. But yeah, the research should be patient centered. That's for sure.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So if there are no other questions, actually, I have a curiosity for Tim to ask. So I would say, and also maybe Carlos can have a better visibility on that probably TrustStroke will be the first let's say, project implementing federated learning in Europe, one of the first one, right? So are there already are similar example of algorithms that have been patented based on federated learning in Europe, and how these can be, let's say, more difficult? Because here, for instance, especially in the case of federated learning, then you have, let's say, multiple data sets that you have to homogenize, harmonize. So there is also a lot of methodology there regarding data curation and preparation. So can you also patent that methodology?
Well,
Yeah, Carlos, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Please.
Well, so at a glance, I've looked at some patent databases just with search terms like federated learning. And the actual methodology for federated learning has had some patenting. So, you know, that was sort of as a methodology itself, not necessarily as a way to solve a problem. But I think the actual use of federated learning is probably difficult to cover unless it actually is very specific to how the problem is being solved these days. I think it's probably also it's been employed so much in so many different indications, and I think the window for it having for it being part of the actual patent claims is rather difficult at this point. What can be kind of similar is the way that the information architecture is described. So, you know, federated learning might be the optimal way to go out and get data from different sources. I think what has changed, obviously, in the past 6 or 7 years since GDPR has been implemented, is that now there's this privacy aspect. So there are some patents that start to have claims around how protected data is employed, but the federated learning often is has been mentioned in the past, but it would be rather difficult to see it as a patentable subject matter now, if that makes sense. It was a bit of a roundabout answer, but I think it's been around so much and used so much that itself is not patentable. It's really around the application it helps to solve.
Yeah, that's true. The federated learning, as far as I know, is a well-known methodology for training algorithms. It's like an infrastructure. Actually, in the cell phones we use, is well-known the use of federated learning for training at the edge, the algorithms. In healthcare, there are projects. There is also a European-funded project in cancer, using a federated learning infrastructure for training algorithm or treatment response. This is the first one in stroke. This is true. But I think that about methodology that can be potentially protected and patented at the end of the day would be, for instance, the common data model. So the methodology for a common data model to create a common data model for stroke with some harmonized variables that are shared for all the centers in the same way, in a harmonized way, and start collecting robust retrospective data. But for now, we have prospective data is easy because we agree all in the variables that we are going to collect in the future. But in the past, there's a huge variability and enormous effort for harmonizing those data. So I think this is something that we need to think about, not only for TrustStroke, but also for Umbrella, for other projects. So this how to protect the common data model, how robust we need. We create this data model not only with the data from the electronic medical record, also including imaging, also including ECG record, the different source data that are different, are complex and not easy to harmonize, standardize, and these procedures are completely new, novel, and I think can be under protection. Should be protected.
Sara, another way, probably incomplete, but maybe another way to answer this question is this company Owkin, OWKIN. I think all the work they do is based on federated learning, and I would be curious to know if they filed any patents around their methodology. I would be surprised if they have. I think they're I think what they're using is not itself proprietary, but it's more around how they use the data and then, you know, basically create the use cases for it as part of large, especially European projects. So I think it's really more about the destination and the journey, or I don't know if it's the other way around, but it's more about you know, where they end up.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Is there any other question or comment? Not in the chat. Up to 30 people, very shy audience today. Anyway, so it's been a pleasure to have you all here today in this webinar. So thank you very much to the speaker. Really, really nice discussion and conversation. So I learned a lot. I love the use cases you share. It's amazing the way how from the top 3 fields that are licensed by the FDA for new AI devices is radiology, cardiovascular, and neurology. It makes sense, radiology for the imaging, but cardiovascular and neurology also, beside imaging, which is really, really encouraging for future projects. So basically, thank you very much for your attention, to the audience, to the speakers, and stay tuned.